Education either functions as an instrument which is used to facilitate integration of the younger generation into the logic of the present system and bring about conformity, or it becomes the practice of freedom, the means by which men and women deal critically and creatively with reality and discover how to participate in the transformation of their world. That was said by Paulo Freire. Well, welcome to Surviving the Matrix, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maxwell Igan. It's a pleasure to be with you once again, and I will be your host for the next hour. Well, folks, it's certainly been an interesting week this week. There's a lot of things going on, and a certain ramping up of the New World Order agenda, which, of course, goes so deep, folks, it's hard to even explain to people in a nutshell what the agenda is, because the spectrum is so huge of what we're actually facing here. But what we're seeing here in Australia, which is very much the front line as much as any other country, in fact, even more so in some ways, because here in Australia we have been disarmed. We are the first country that has ever been disarmed since World War II. And this was done, of course, due to the Port Arthur massacre that happened in Australia in 1996. And, of course, there is an abundant amount of evidence that exists which can prove beyond any reasonable doubt that Martin Bryant was not the gunman at the Port Arthur massacre, and it's very likely the whole thing was a false flag operation staged by the government. Even the weapon that was used is a weapon that had been confiscated by Victorian police a year earlier. And Martin Bryant was, of course, a mentally handicapped young man who had no shooting experience, and we are told that he managed to pull off what has been the most accurate shooting spree we've ever seen from any mass killing, any mass murder. The Port Arthur massacre saw the death of 35 people and, as I said, shot in a very accurate manner. And there's an abundant amount of evidence out there, folks, which heavily disputes the government version of events. Martin Bryant's mother also says that she has never seen any evidence to indicate that the killer was her son, and it just goes on. And as I said, very credible evidence that heavily disputes the government's version of events does exist, and it exists in the public domain. So I suggest you do your research on the Port Arthur massacre as well. And this, of course, happened the year after little Johnny Howard, who we love to call Mr. Magoo, coincidentally, of course, signed off on most of the deals which would allow things such as coal seam gas mining to be carried out in this country. So it would appear that back then they already figured out what they were going to do to this nation, and they thought, well, the people aren't going to like this, so we'd better get all their weapons off them so that we can get away with what we're about to do. But anyway, look, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent here, so getting back to the topic, what we've seen happen here in Australia in the last week is we've seen the introduction of legislation which will introduce full body scanners into the airports in Australia. I believe this is happening around about July, which is around about the same time the carbon tax is due to come in. And this is happening at the same time as these very same body scanners are being banned across Europe, across all of Europe, because they actually use a terahertz wave which literally shreds your DNA. And this has been shown, and so they're being banned right across Europe by the European Union, and at the very same time they're being introduced into Australia. And not only that, they're being made mandatory for any international travellers that come into this country or leave this country are required to go through these body scanners. Now, this is a precursor for what they will soon be doing around the rest of the planet as well, if they can get away with it here, which unfortunately they are likely to because of the apathetic nature of the Australian people, who tend to only believe what their television tells them. Although hopefully we may see a few people wake up to the corruption that does exist within the governmental structure in this country. And something that might actually help do this is the release of a new film. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's called Expendable. I have it actually featured on the Crowhouse homepage at the moment. If you go to thecrowhouse.com, you will find the film right there on the homepage. Just scroll down a little bit and there it is. And I'm also featuring it periodically on my YouTube channel as well. And you can go to expendable.tv, which is the website. And this website and this film contains enough information to virtually bring down the Australian Federal Police and to expose the corruption that exists in the highest levels of our government. Admittedly, the film deals with the Howard government that existed a few years ago, but unfortunately the corruption that's referred to in this film is inherent within the entire political system and most especially within the Australian Federal Police, who work hand in hand with the politicians. And the film relates to a lady called Schapelle Corby, who was arrested in Bali in 2004 and sentenced to 20 years jail in 2005 for smuggling drugs into Bali that can now be proven to not have been hers. And this film exposes what happened and how the Australian government not only ignored the evidence but ensured that this young woman would be convicted, because a verdict of innocent would have caused an investigation into the drug running that happens at Australian airports, with which the Australian Federal Police are very likely heavily involved. And so I highly recommend that everybody view this film. If you're listening to this show in Australia, I highly recommend that you go to expendable.tv and watch the film, download a copy of it, and get it out to your friends and neighbours. Tell everybody about it, because every Australian needs to see this film. And look, we're not talking about a Hollywood production here, folks, okay? It's just it's a low-budget film. It's just a group of people who are desperately trying to get their research out to the people of Australia. So please bear with the quality of the production and simply look at the information that it is presenting to you, because not only is it very effective at demonstrating the level of corruption that exists within our government, but a young woman's life depends on justice prevailing, and this will only happen with an outcry of public opinion from the people of Australia. It's extremely important, folks, it really is, and I really cannot promote this film to you enough, so please check it out and please share it with everybody that you can. And remember, folks, that everything that is depicted in this film is still happening at Australian airports. It is still happening, and so any one of you who happens to take a holiday to Bali or a holiday to Thailand or a holiday literally anywhere could very easily find themselves in exactly the same circumstances as Schapelle Corby. And the reason I'm promoting the film so much is because the only way Schapelle Corby is going to be released from jail is with enough public outcry. And so it's important that the people of Australia get on board and make a lot of noise about this, because we simply cannot allow this type of corruption to exist within our government and police systems. And the only people who have any hope at all of addressing the government and police systems are the people of Australia. Because according to our Constitution, we are the ones who hold all the cards, and we are the ones to whom our government is ultimately accountable. But we have to stand up to make it happen. We can't simply let them investigate themselves. We have to get this information out to the community and stand up and make a difference. And we owe it to our children and to all of our descendants to do so. And if we fail to do so, then we're simply freeloading on our children and on our grandchildren. And I feel that it has to be done quickly, folks. In fact, I really believe that we have to get on board and make some positive changes this year. And because these body scanners are being rolled in, we need to do it as quickly as possible. And I urge everybody to investigate the information that exists on these body scanners. You can go to thecrowhouse.com. I've got links there to articles that you need to see. And we have to really look at what's happening in this country. And another very important thing that we have to look at is GM food. GM food is being introduced pretty well across the board in this country. It's completely unregulated. It is not labelled as GM food. And genetically modified food has been proven through scientific testing to cause sterility and organ damage to every animal that they've tested it on. And this occurs about 3 or 4 generations down the track from when the GM diet is introduced. So if you eat GM food, then you are going to find that your grandkids and your great-grandkids are very likely going to be sterile and have very, very damaged organs. And this is exactly why genetically modified food has also been banned across Europe, the same as airport scanners have been banned across Europe. And the thing is that this is all happening on our watch, folks. Our governments have got the whole society, especially within Australia here, they've got this entire country brainwashed on television. They've got all of America brainwashed on television, all of England, most of Europe, although it would appear that the governments in Europe are a little bit more intelligent because they are at least working to ban these very, very damaging items from their continent. But our governments are not. The governments of America, of England, of New Zealand, and most especially of Australia are allowing the people to be used basically as a scientific experiment, because all of the people in Western nations are being genetically altered without their consent and without their knowledge. And I also very much suspect that these full body scanners, which, as I said, are shown to attack DNA, are going to feature very heavily in this genetic modification process, because everything else that they do to us is also designed to attack our DNA. All the genetically modified food attacks your DNA. What is coming down in the chemtrails seems to very much affect your DNA. We've got things like smart meters, mobile phones, this entire electronic culture. There would appear to be a very, very large electromagnetic grid that's being put in place. And Australia really is very much the front line in what's going on here, folks. And if the people of this country do not get up and put things right and reinstate natural law in this country, we are heading for a very dark future indeed. The fact is that the Gillard regime that currently controls this country is the worst government this country has ever seen, and Julia Gillard is little more than a modern-day tyrant of the most psychopathic kind. And she is a tyrant, folks. She is quite literally a tyrant. She simply introduces whichever corrupt and repressive legislation she likes, stages false attacks on herself in order to get a photo op. She was elected on a platform of barefaced lies. She's a disgrace to her country, and she should be in jail. In fact, after watching the film Expendable, one can only come to the logical conclusion that a great deal of Australia's politicians should be in jail, and so it would appear should the highest ranks of the Australian Federal Police Force. They should also be in jail, as should many reporters at the ABC and Channel 7 and probably the rest of Australia's media as well. And the fact that these criminals are running rampant throughout these organisations just goes to show how ineffective and how corrupt the Australian police actually are. As I mentioned on a Sydney breakfast show the other day, the Australian police are simply a criminal gang who have a monopoly on violence. And things will only get worse until the Australian people decide to stand up and reclaim the rights that are inherent to them through the constitution of this country, rather than simply sitting there enjoying television and beer, which is, of course, what most Australians seem to do with their spare time. Go to the pub, watch television, watch sport, or sit around the barbie with a beer while they allow their country, their nation, and their freedoms to be decimated around them, oblivious to any reality other than what the television has told them. Sometimes I just wonder what it's going to take to wake these people up, folks. I really do. Perhaps I'm too calm on these radio shows. Perhaps I should get the claws out a little bit and start screaming at people. Maybe they will wake up then. Maybe they'll appreciate the drama and actually stand up and do something about this situation that we are facing, because it's just getting out of control. The Australian government is completely and utterly out of control. They really are. There was an article in the local newspaper about how the Australian Federal Police have admitted that they are spying on any anti-CSG organisations. Anybody who is organising anything to speak out against coal seam gas, the Australian Federal Police are spying on them, very likely because they consider them to be something similar to a terrorist cell. You see, anything that is going to stand against the corporatism that is being implemented by the criminal gang that we call the Australian government, and the group of hired thugs known as the Australian Federal Police who carry out the will and are the muscle for this crime gang. Anybody who stands against the corporate corruption that these organisations are promoting is considered to be a terrorist. We've got this tyrannical dictator, Julia Gillard, saying that people who don't vaccinate their children are going to lose tax benefits. They're saying that you have to be irradiated and have your DNA shredded if you're going to travel. They're saying that you have to have fluoride in your water so that your pineal gland is locked off and your brain matter is damaged. You're going to be forced to eat genetically modified food, which we know will cause sterility and organ damage a few generations down the line. And of course, while you're doing all of this, not only do you have to pay to be alive, but we are going to introduce a tax on your breathing. And of course, we're implementing all of this because we care about you and we are providing for your future, like the good custodians you employ us to be. And this is what this psychotic moron called Julia Gillard, who is running Australia, is doing to the Australian people. And the Australian people, because they only have a TV education, are just sitting there saying, everything's okay, I don't mind, the government is there to help me, when the government is simply in the process of raping this country and stealing everything they can from the people. And I've really had enough of it, folks. I honestly don't know what it's going to take for the people of Australia to turn Australia back into Australia rather than the apathetic alcoholics club that it currently is. But people certainly need to get on board and start making some noise about this situation because it really couldn't get more in your face. Well, I suppose it could get more in your face when people start developing real sicknesses from the things that are being forced upon us, but that might be a little bit down the track yet, and by that time it will be too late to do anything about it. You know, all of you people out there who aren't acting on this information, and all of the people out there who are allowing all of these things to be put in place, one day you're going to have to look your children and your grandchildren in the eye when they ask you what you were doing when this police state was being built around us. And you're going to have to say, well, I'm sorry, son, but I was too busy drinking beer, watching television, and gathering useless trinkets around me to ensure that you had a future. And that is, of course, only if your child and your grandchild have a world to live in, because if you fail to act on this information, it's very likely that they won't. And that's the thing, folks. I mean, when you take everything into account and you put it all in perspective, you look at things such as coal seam gas, look at the chemtrails, look at Fukushima, look at what's happening to this planet, and it's very unlikely that this planet is going to support life after perhaps the next 50 to 100 years. I mean, we were all worried about a scenario such as Brave New World or 1984 coming to pass, but the way things are going, it doesn't look like the planet will actually last that long. And it isn't because of anthropogenic climate change. It's because of government and corporate corruption. That is the problem. You know, the fact that this government is rolling out a carbon tax while they are selling the country off for coal seam gas mining, which is one of the most pollutive industries ever known to man, is a complete joke and should be enough to wake up anybody to the fact that their government is lying to them. All a carbon tax is a tax on breathing. That's all it is. It will do nothing to prevent pollution because the government is selling the place off to mining industries quicker than you can make pancakes. And that's what's causing all the pollution. And yet they're going to tax you for breathing because they say carbon is the problem. You are the problem. Next thing, they'll be bringing in short breath hour, where you're only allowed to fill half your lungs for the next 30 minutes because you're breathing too much air. I mean, I don't know where these people are going, but they're a bunch of psychotic lunatics, and they're just getting away with all of this rubbish because everybody's brainwashed by what their television is telling them. Everyone has this television version of reality going on in their mind, and they think it's true. You go and talk to anybody on the street, go and talk to anybody in a shop and suggest an alternate method of thinking to them, and they look at you like you've got two heads, because all they believe is what their television tells them. The fluoride that they consume in their daily products numbs their brain, their television programs them, and they think it's reality. And they just go about their lives like robots. It's absolutely amazing to see. But it's about time you all woke up, folks. It's really about time people looked around them and started to question their reality a little bit. I mean, like I said, I don't know how more blatant this has to become, but I mean, just the fact that the government's rolling out these body scanners when they've just been banned throughout the entirety of Europe because they're shown to just tear your DNA apart. And they're allowing genetically modified food to be sold here and making sure people consume it by bringing in food bills designed to stop people sharing any of their homegrown food. And yet this GM food is shown, clearly shown, to cause damage to generations of species. And all the information to prove all of this is all there in the public domain if people can be bothered searching for it. But they don't, because they're told by their television, "Oh, don't trust anything you see on the internet. You can only trust us because we're the television. We're the television and we have government approval." And you've got the entire internet trying to scream out and alert people to the fact that all this criminal rubbish is being run by their governments, and yet you've got the two people in Australia who control all of the media in Australia who are telling you, "Oh, no, don't listen to all those thousands and thousands of other people who are screaming out that you're in danger. Just listen to us. Just listen to us. We'll keep you informed, and here's some entertainment. Now make sure you get up in the morning and go to work and collect lots of stuff, or the people won't like you. Remember, the more stuff you have, the higher you are on the social ladder. And after all, that's what's important, isn't it?" People just live their lives in this way. It's quite amazing, folks. People are waiting for the introduction of Brave New World. Well, it's already here. Maybe not in some of its more scientific and reproductive aspects, but as far as the Department of Conditioning goes, well, it's very much alive and well in 2012. But we're being offered a huge opportunity here, folks, to break out of this conditioning and to change reality. In fact, we're being offered more and more opportunities every day. We've had the gift of coal seam gas mining, which has served to unite huge sections of the community to a common cause. We haven't made a lot of progress yet at stopping it, but it is breaking down barriers between people. And so that's the opportunity that lies within the disaster that is coal seam gas mining. And now we have a further opportunity in the release of the film Expendable, which clearly exposes the criminality at the highest levels of the Australian government and the Australian Federal Police. And so there within the tragedy and the travesty of justice that is the plight of poor Schapelle Corby lies the opportunity not only to get her released, but to have the corruption that exists within our government laid bare before all the people of Australia. And when the people that are fighting the battle to stop coal seam gas mining become aware of the level of corruption they are dealing with through the mechanism of something like the film Expendable, exposing the corruption in the Schapelle Corby case, then the people of Australia are even further armed against their government. Because that's what the information contained within this film is, folks. It's a weapon. It's a weapon that can be used to expose the system. They've tried to beat us with their rules they write on paper, and these are the weapons that the government has used against the people, and that they've used their gangs of armed thugs to enforce. But now we have the reports surrounding Schapelle Corby on paper, and our paper very much trumps their paper, because our paper shows that their paper was created by a criminal gang who has complete disregard for the people of this country. So all of these things are gifts and opportunities, folks, if they can be taken that way. And it's only by taking them that way, it's only by seeing them as a gift that you can right the wrong that is being perpetrated against the people. It's only by seeing coal seam gas mining as a gift that you can prevent coal seam gas mining, and it's only by seeing the exposing of Australian government criminality in the expendable film as a gift that we can also stand up and address that issue. And that issue needs to be addressed very quickly. Both issues need to be addressed very quickly, but ultimately both issues are connected because both issues involve corruption at the absolute highest level of the Australian system. And this can only be addressed when the people of Australia decide to peacefully stand in the power that is granted to them via the Constitution of this country. We have this power, folks. It's there indelibly imprinted in our Constitution, and nothing can take that away. It doesn't matter if it's been legislated out of existence by criminals within government, because that legislation is void. The only law that we have in this country is the Constitution of this land, and that is based on natural law, because it gives the people the ultimate say in what happens in this country. The only problem is that it's no longer taught in schools. Many Australian people don't even know we have a constitution, and it's not something that people are aware of how to do. But the information's there, folks, so get a copy of the Constitution, spread it and share it with your neighbours, share the film Expendable, share some of the coal seam gas information that I've got posted on my website, thecrowhouse.com. You can go there, click CSG information, and there's a lot of information there, a lot of it relating to Australia, a lot of it relating to the Northern Rivers area where I live. And this can show your neighbours and show the people around you what is going on in this country. And you can show them the Constitution, and you can show that if we start having town meetings, we start having community gatherings and making people aware of this information, then we can turn things around. But if we don't do it soon, this country will be lost, and it will be lost forever. And I'm really not over-dramatising things here, folks. We are facing a serious situation. And I think it's break time here, so I'll leave it there for now, and we'll continue in a few minutes. Thanks for listening. Welcome back, my friends. Now, before the break, I was talking about some of the many perils that we're facing. And folks, look, I've been concentrating on Australia quite a bit for this show because there are some serious things going on here. And I still believe that Australia itself presents a huge opportunity to the world if the people of Australia can see the opportunity that they have before them. And that's why I felt it was important that Australia have a voice, and it's why I have put so much effort in attempting to wake up the people of Australia. And this is because Australia only has a population of 22 million people. Australia has less people than Greater New York. And so therefore, statistically speaking, it would be easier to wake up the entire country of Australia than it would be to wake up one city in the United States. And the beauty of that is that if we can wake up the people of Australia, we've woken up an entire country. And if an entire country rather than one city makes a statement on the global stage, then it will send a shockwave around the world that may indeed wake up the rest of the world. And when the people of Australia are being presented with the opportunities for change that they're now being presented with, and when the corruption of the Australian government and the Australian police force and the entire Australian system is being laid so bare right in front of their eyes, I believe the Australian people need to seize this opportunity to reinstate the Constitution in this country and to hold those criminals that have committed these acts within our government accountable for their actions. And folks, I don't like to keep harping on a topic, but we really have to make some noise about Schapelle Corby. I want everybody out there who is able to do so to download a copy of Expendable from expendable.tv, or if you have Firefox browser, install a plugin called Download Helper and use that to download the film Expendable from YouTube, and you can download it as an MP4, will be the easiest thing. And then use a DVD burning program such as Nero to convert it to a DVD, and send DVDs to all the police stations in your area, send DVDs to any lawyers that you know. If you know of any Queen's Counsels or you know the addresses of any Queen's Counsels in Australia, send them a DVD. Send a DVD to the office of the Prime Minister of Australia and ask her straight out if she intends to fix this problem and get Schapelle released, or should we, the people, look at holding her as being complicit in the future when we take John Howard and Alexander Downer and Mick Keelty to trial. And make it clear, folks, tell them that this is what we intend to do, because the information contained within this film has caused we, the people of Australia, to become aware of the immediate need to reinstate the Constitution of our country, and because we have the right to do this, it is what we intend to do. So you need to decide which side you are on right now. Say that to Julia Gillard when you write to her, folks, and ask her straight out whether she stands for Australia or whether she stands for the corporate corruption that put Schapelle Corby in the position that she's in. Because frankly, it's either one or the other. And make a lot of noise about it. Send it to all the radio stations, send it to all the TV stations, send it to everybody you can. Let's flood Australia. Let's flood the offices of politicians. Let's flood the supermarkets. Let's flood the towns, flood the shops, and flood the entire country with copies of this DVD. Get it out to everybody that you can. Send it to all the newspapers in your area. Do everything you can to get this information into the hands of every single Australian, because this information can be used not only to secure the immediate release of Schapelle Corby, but it can bring down the criminality that exists within the Australian Federal Police and the Australian Federal Government, which in turn will stop practices such as coal seam gas mining immediately, just by default. Once this government and this federal police force are exposed as the criminals that they are, we will finally be able to have some freedom and some justice in this country. And what we're being presented with here is an opportunity to achieve this. And this is one of the most important moments of Australian history. It really is, folks, because now is the time that we can choose to be free, because with the release of this film and the support of the community, we finally have the means with which to not only save the life of a young woman wrongly incarcerated for a crime she did not commit, but to expose the criminality within government for what it is, and to secure the freedom which is our birthright, and which has been kept from us by those people that we employ to protect us. And folks, even if you're listening to this show in America or in Sweden or in Spain or anywhere you happen to be, you can help with this as well. All you have to do is download a copy of Expendable using one of the methods that I've previously outlined and send it to the UN. Send it to your local council members in your area and tell them you wish to put pressure on the Australian consulate. Send it to your Prime Minister. Send it to anybody you think is in any position of political clout within your country. But send copies to the UN. And folks, everybody should do this. You imagine if the Prime Minister's office gets 1 million copies of this DVD arrive in the mail, all asking Julia Gillard whether she is going to choose to rectify the problem or choose to be held as complicit. Imagine the effect this will have. Imagine if the ABC gets 10 million copies of this DVD sent to them. Imagine if your local newspaper in your area gets 1,000 copies of this DVD. If everybody gets literally swamped with this DVD, if everybody listening to this show sends a DVD to a politician, to a police station, to a radio station, to a television station, to a newspaper, or even all of them, all the newspapers in your area, all the television stations in your area, all the politicians in your area, just go out and burn 20 or 30 copies, folks. I mean, what's it going to cost? 20 or 30 copies. Everybody send off 20 or 30 copies of this DVD. Let's seize this opportunity, folks, because this can bring about some real change. And this can further unite the people of this country to a common cause. because the common cause that it's uniting us to is government corruption. It's the corruption of the system itself. And that, my friends, is the ultimate problem. That is the problem that causes all of the smaller symptoms down the line, such as coal seam gas mining, such as Schapelle Corby. As important as Schapelle Corby is, she is still a symptom of this corrupt system. But now, because the details surrounding the Schapelle Corby case have been laid out bare for all to see, this information can now be used as the weapon the people of Australia need to bring down the corrupt system that currently enslaves us and hold those criminals within the system who support it accountable for their actions. So let's do it, folks. Let's seize the opportunity we're being provided with. And I want you to make this radio show viral as well. Post this radio show everywhere you can. Try to ensure that people can listen to all 4 parts. If you have a YouTube channel where you are able to upload full-length clips, then please, by all means, download all 4 parts of this radio show and re-upload it to your channel, all as one file, or just post links to this show on all the websites and blogs that you can find. Let's get this word out to people, and let's make a difference. Because I believe 2012 is our year, folks. This is the year human consciousness can indeed shift. But we have to participate in that shift. And if you're in a state of love, if you are in your heart and you wish to improve reality by your presence in it, then this case, the case of Schapelle Corby, is providing you the opportunity to do so, the opportunity to walk your talk. And we can make a difference with this, but we have to embrace the opportunity, folks. So let's all get on board and get this information out to people. Be calm, be nice, be polite, but just get the information out to people and don't stop. Let's start doing it and let's continue until the job is done. And just think what we could achieve with this, folks. There are so many people that are held in jail that are innocent of any crime. There are so many people wrongly incarcerated. There's Martin Bryant sitting and rotting in a jail in Tasmania or Melbourne or somewhere for a crime that it can be proven he didn't commit. Even when one begins to look at the facts surrounding the Schapelle Corby case, and then it begins to sink in that this is the same government that was in power during the Port Arthur massacre and which used that massacre to disarm the Australian people, bells should start going off in people's heads just when they realise the depth of the corruption that existed within the Howard regime and that still exists within this entire government system. And we've got the same federal police force in power, folks. They haven't gone anywhere. So there's undoubtedly still drugs being run through the airports, and they're probably still using your luggage to do so. So what do you say, folks? Peaceful non-compliance and a demand that the Constitution of this country be reinstated in its fullest of power, a demand that immediate action is undertaken by the Australian government to secure the release of Schapelle Corby, a demand that John Howard, all the government ministers involved, and Mick Keelty and all of the federal police officers involved in the Schapelle Corby case all be brought to trial, and that proper, natural law and real justice be established in this country. We the people have the power to do so through the Constitution that was granted to us by our founding fathers. We have a great Constitution, folks. Our founding fathers really prepared for this very type of incident, and they made sure that we the people of this country retain the ultimate power in this country. So we have the legal right to hold our government accountable for its actions, and it's high time we did so, because if we don't, our children are not going to have a country. The onus lies on us, and the time for us to take the matter in hand is now. We don't need any violence, we don't need any revolution, we don't need any marches in the streets. We simply need a united act of solidarity, and we need to stand up for freedom as one voice. And we have to do it now, folks, because as I said, if we don't, then there will be no freedom for our children or for our grandchildren. And it has to be done now because we are fast running out of time with which to address the matter. Because very soon, folks, if things go on the way they are, we will not have the ability to do so. More and more ridiculous pieces of legislation are being foisted upon the people. More and more police are being employed every day. They are becoming increasingly violent, and very soon the Australian culture will be squashed into a little box and will not dare look outside the louvers after night falls. And folks, night is soon to fall over this entire country if the people don't stand up and do something about it. There are times that appear periodically throughout history that become moments of significant change. We look back at these moments and we imagine what tumultuous times they may have been. But we often fail to look around us and see that the times we live in are also part of history, and that the time we are currently in right now is in fact one of the most significant moments that the human species has ever experienced. Because we are currently at the moment when real change can come about, but it can only come about through the participation of the people. There are many people waiting to ascend, waiting for the world to change in 2012. And the world can indeed change this year, but it can only change with the participation of the people. I know I've said this to you many times before, but this is the moment, folks. This is the year, this is the day, and this is the hour that it can happen. If everybody out there who listens to this show today spreads this show and does the things that I've suggested in this show and works as hard as they can to bring this information to the general public, we can quite literally cause a groundswell within this country that could effectively send a shockwave around the entire world. We have the means with which to do it. All we need now is the will. And that's it, folks. So the question is, what will you do? Will you choose to be a part of this great moment? Or will you choose to go back to your television? Will you see the opportunity that's being presented to us, and will you act upon this information? Just think, folks, you can be part of history. And this really is a historical moment, because we can create a shockwave of human freedom such as the world has never seen in its entire history. We can create it from this country. We have the means to do so. All we have to do is to stand up and do it, peacefully and firmly. I mean, there is enough information out there now that we could unite this entire community. All the information's there, folks. Just look at coal seam gas. Just look at this Schapelle Corby case. Just look at everything. They're issuing fines for everything. They're introducing body scanners that permanently damage your DNA. You're introducing GMO food that permanently damages your biology. They are doing everything they can to destroy this country and to cast the people within this country on the trash heap. And as I have said repeatedly throughout this show, now we are being provided with the means with which to rectify this problem. The means to rectify the problem peacefully. All we have to do is lay the corrupt machinations of this system bare for the public to see, and the public will have no choice but to act, because action on these issues is the only option that is available for anyone with a sound mind. So yeah, let's do it, folks. Let's get these DVDs out to everybody. Let's flood Australia with DVDs. Let's flood the UN with DVDs. And let's see if we can flood the world with this information. Personally, I see the information contained within this film as one of the greatest opportunities we've ever been presented with in this country. But we have to act on it. Well, we've got about 10 minutes of broadcast time left, folks. There was a lot of topics I did intend to cover today. I actually intended to have Santos Bonacci on the show this week. We were going to discuss a few things, but I felt a real need to put out what is essentially an emergency broadcast in an attempt to bring this information to as many people as I can, as quickly as I can. And I'll try to have Santos on the show next week so we can discuss a few things, and we might even touch on this issue again. And I'm sure Santos would have a lot of other issues he'll like to cover as well. Something else that you might want to do if you live in Australia is you might want to send this information to Get Up. I mean, I had them send me a letter this morning saying that we all need to send a rose to a politician so that we can say we approve of gay marriages. And I'm thinking, why would gay people even want to get married? I mean, honestly, if two people love each other, I don't see why it is necessary to enter into some contract with a corrupt government in order to prove it. And so I wrote back to them. I said, well, look, here is the film Expendable if you feel like addressing a real issue. And I said, here are some links to the damage that has been done by the body scanners that are now banned in Europe because they have been proven to damage your DNA, and that our government is in the process of not only installing but making mandatory within this country. Perhaps you'd like to address that, and perhaps you'd like to address the issue of the GMO food that our government is forcing upon us, the very same GMO food that has been banned in Europe because it shows to cause problems in every animal they've tested it on through successive generations. I mean, I don't trust Get Up at all, folks, but when I see them send me a letter telling me I need to send a rose to a politician, I just think, well, wouldn't it be nice if 1 million people wrote to them as well and actually suggested that they deal with some real issues like the ones I just outlined. So if you feel like doing something else, folks, why don't you write to them and suggest that they address the issues I just mentioned? I mean, not that they will, but every effort we make is good, and this is also a good way of letting these people know that we don't get fooled by their organisations and we actually know what's going on. We need to create a real groundswell, folks, we really do. We need to saturate this country with this information, and the time to do so is absolutely now. Folks, the world today, quite literally, is hanging in the balance. If you're out there, if you want to see a real ascension of human consciousness, then participate in the reality that you currently inhabit, folks. That's the key. Because if you just sit down and meditate and wait for the world to change, well, it's going to change all right, but I don't think it's going to change into what you hoped for. If you think it's too much trouble and it's too much bother and you just want to stay safe within your home, well then think again, because you will not be safe within your home in the world that is being created by this government. For a start, in a few years you will not have anything but recycled water to drink in this country, and you'll have nothing but genetically modified food to eat. This is all part of the global plan to reduce population, folks, and it's being implemented here. It's being implemented here in Australia, right under the noses of the people. And the people are too busy drinking beer and listening to their television to do anything about it. But we have to. We don't have a choice, because we are the custodians of freedom. We are the custodians of all that is good in this world. We are the custodians of the future of our children and of the generations to come after them. We've done a pretty bad job up to this point, but now we are being provided with the tools we need to start taking the matter in hand and to change the direction that we're sailing in. The winds have never been more in our favour, and our path has never been straighter or more true than what it is now. It's right there before us, folks. We just have to have the will as a people to stand up and become who and what we are. We just have to make it happen. Folks, I'm going to do a massive DVD distribution around this town. I'm going to need a lot of DVDs to pull it off. If anybody can help me with that, it would be most appreciated. You see, this is the sort of stuff that I ask for donations for, folks, because I simply can't do it on my own. I'm going to need to buy some sort of DVD printer as well. I've been having a terrible time with DVD printing lately, and I've found that if I can print a label on a DVD, then people are much more likely to watch the disc. If you give people something that's got a label written on it in Nico pen, they just tend to not watch it for some reason. They like fancy labels. It makes things look more professional, and they just seem to be far more inclined to watch it. So I need to find one of them somewhere. If anybody knows where I can get some sort of reasonably priced DVD printing setup, just something that just prints DVDs, then that would be great. Because I really intend to go out to bat with this Schapelle Corby issue, folks. Because I think that this really does provide us with some much-needed tools with which to lay the heart of the beast virtually bare, folks, and expose so much of the corruption that exists within government, which will in turn cause scrutiny of the entire political system and legal system within this country. And that's what needs to be looked at. The people need to wake up to what's going on, and most of them are so asleep that you need some really solid information to be able to present them with. And this may be exactly what's needed to wake up the people of Australia, to wake up an entire country, folks, and to thereby send a shockwave that will travel right around this globe and potentially wake up people all around the world to the fact that their governments are lying to them, and that for the first time in history, the entire human race is being presented with an opportunity for true freedom. We've spent a lot of years waiting for a huge shift that is supposed to happen in 2012. We've spent a lot of time wondering what this shift will be. I've always said to people that it will be something that will require your participation. And I believe that the opportunity for this shift is now being presented to us on a silver platter, folks. It's being presented to us on a silver platter with golden utensils. All we have to do is step up to the table. Well, look, we're getting very close to the end of the show here, folks. I know this has probably been quite a dramatic episode of Surviving the Matrix, but I feel that this is a message that my country most desperately needs to hear. In fact, I believe the entire world needs to hear the message contained within this show. So again, I would ask you to please post this video everywhere. Please re-upload it to your channel, post it on blogs, and get that film expendable out to as many people as you are able. And any support you can offer me in creating some sort of a groundswell here would be most appreciated. But that is it for me today, folks, and if you ever get to listen to this broadcast, Schapelle, please know that we, the people of Australia, intend to make a stand for you, and I intend to spearhead that as much as I am able. I intend to make some noise, I intend to do it as publicly as possible, and I do not intend to stop until you are freed. And that's it for me for today, folks. Thank you very much for joining me on this very important edition of Surviving the Matrix. I'll look forward to speaking to you again next week. Please stay safe until then, and please do your best to help and participate in the actions that have been outlined on this show today. Thank you for your time. In Lakesh.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe. Our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TV while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. I don't want you to protest, I don't want you to riot, I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it, my life has value.
I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. You know I'm mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take it under this spell, but I managed to break it. Glued to the tube, now I finally escaped it. Take a hold of my fate, gonna claim it and shape it. With no hesitation. Move the foundation like a tectonic blade. I'm here to shake up the nation. Awaken the sheep, will resurrect every people. Unveil every truth and expose every evil. Another upheaval, revolution of the mind, evolution of the spirit, liberty for humankind. Giving sight to the blind, strength to the weak. Every time I speak they wanna see me 6 feet deep, but I don't give a fuck when it comes to pass. Bury me face down so they can kiss my ass. In a world of glass, I'm the brick breaking the planet.
I'm a human being, God damn it!
I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. Take a step to the left, now move to the right, but we're just running in circles if we don't unite. Stand up and fight, put away false pride, free your mind from this left-right paradigm. I remember the day when I first woke up, took a look at those towers, said what the fuck? I know buildings don't fall at free fall speed, but then it all became clear. Thermite at the scene, dumping fluoride in the water, mercury and vaccines, bringing down the IQs of every human being. It's destruction by design, the fall of mankind. Problem, reaction, solution every time. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore! I'm mad as hell! I'm not going to take it anymore! I'm not going to take it anymore! I'm mad as hell!
I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it. I'm a human being, my life has value. I'm a human being, God damn it.